And another name on the GOP primary ballot that you will see on your ballots here in South Carolina is David Stuckenberg. So, Mr. Stuckenberg, thank you so much for joining us. You've been adamant to tell people that this is not just a two-man race right now. There are 4 people involved. You are one of the 4. So here's your sales pitch to voters. What is your elevator pitch to them in regards of them considering you as one of the 4 that they can vote for here in South Carolina?
Thank you, Justin. Look, we all know the dangers of a dangerous intersection, and we know that lives can be changed in an instant if you careen through that intersection without looking both ways. Right now, America has a big problem. We have a choice to make, and we have to make that choice wisely. The choice we have is between revolution and reform, and this is the choice that the GOP is going to make in this election. I believe I represent reform, a steady path to stability, to a turnaround team for our nation that really has 3 primary focuses. Number 1, America is at war with a new block of revisionist powers that are seeking to overcome the United States of America. Our political will to resist that great power block that has formed against us is very low, and we need expertise and leadership that understands what to do and how to deal with that. I have more than 21 years in federal military service, more than 150 combat missions, and I am combat proven and a national security expert in many respects to understand exactly the nature of the war in which America is facing today. And that requires a special kind of finesse that can move us back into the number 1 position in the world as the guardian of liberty's torch. Number 2, we have an immigration problem that is runaway and have been allowed to go out of control. In 2023, we reached a 15% foreign-born population, which was not supposed to happen until 2033. So congratulations, we reached it 10 years early, thanks to both the Biden and the Trump administration. We have 8 million unknowns in the United States, and they have to be dealt with in a way that is fair and just and right. And yet we have this problem that is sinking us in terms of resources and essentially what to do about this national security risk. I propose to solve the problem within 72 hours of taking office. That's the time it will take to muster federal troops under a U.S. NORTHCOM mission to guard and safeguard our borders, both north and south, within 72 hours. Then, over the next 60 days, we can implement a registration period that will allow immigrants who are here, or illegal immigrants who are here, to come out from the shadows wherever they are, and it doesn't matter if they want to put in a form in a church offering plate, or whether or not they want to turn it in at a doctor's office or to a victim advocate. We need to know who they are, and we'll give them that opportunity to do that within 60 days. If outside of that period they don't have a good alibi, meaning something was preventing them from registering, like maybe they were kidnapped or locked up somewhere, they're going to be deported, and that's going to be part of the incentive to get them to register. Now that we've stopped, we know who they are, we can decide who stays, and that part will be very, very fair and based on what America needs, quite frankly.
I wanted to ask you, sorry to interrupt, but it's something too that I saw in a previous interview talking about when you want to make sure you go get these individuals who you say are illegally in the country because they failed to register. It almost, in a way, sounds a bit like martial law, because how else would you be able to track them down? These individuals are all over the country, and you said that you could do it in 90 days. Go out and find them, and if they don't have a good alibi, they're going to be deported. But that sounds like that could be something along the lines of martial law.
Well, I appreciate the thought, but that's not accurate. Think of it like this. We're going to enforce the laws on our books. You and I are law-abiding citizens. I can promise you I'm not a felon or a criminal of any kind, and thank God we need those kind of candidates running for president. We need people who have a good record, and that's why I'm running. I have a absolutely impeccable record, both as a military professional, as a business person, and a national security strategist. America is ready for leadership that has not been compromised by special interest groups and so forth. What I'm proposing is that we enforce the laws on our books, that outside of a 60-day grace period for those who are not here legally, to come out and essentially touch base, just like you would if you were playing freeze tag as a kid. We're going to give them that base. We're going to give them that alien ID number. We need to know their situation. We need to know whether they're being controlled, whether they're being trafficked. Do they need help? This is a humanitarian effort. If in those 60 days, for some reason, something prevents them from registering, we're going to take that into account. That's the alibi piece. But if they are an MS-13 gang member or some other nefarious actor who is here to do America harm, once we find them, if they're stopped in a routine pullover, or whether they're registering or trying to get a driver's license and they don't have that registration number, the authorities will be notified, and the authorities will be given the opportunity to turn them over to Immigrations and Customs for deportation within 24 hours. Again, you have to have a carrot and a stick in this. The draw to America is that we are the land that is just, that is free, and we uphold what is right, right? And so we want to do what's right for people. We want to treat people with humanity. That is ingrained in who we are. And we understand, give me your tired, give me your weary. This is the land of the free and the home of the brave. But you can't just come here willy-nilly if you feel like it, and there has to be a penalty if you don't comply. So what we're going to do is we understand that our leadership has failed, that we have not held people to account, and now it's time for accountability, and that's going to happen both in the federal by instituting new rules and regulations, and that's also going to happen on behalf of those who are here. They have a role to play as well, and they need to get square with government. If you and I are law-abiding, we expect the others who are here as well to abide by those laws if they're going to stay. Finally, I want to get to the economy, because it's very important that we understand the American dream is being lost. Right now, it costs more for a home than it has ever cost in American history, and that's disincentivizing home ownership. It's slaying our economy. Small businesses like mine are being choked out by a federal government that has become over-bloated. And at the end of the day, we have to saw away that regulation, and we have to cut federal taxes. And what I'm proposing to do is something very drastic, like what Ronald Reagan did. His was 28%. Mine will be 33% across the board, which will allow us to cut taxes in every income bracket evenly. And the reason that works is because it allows people to keep more of what they earn, and in turn, they can invest that in small businesses, they can grow it, they can hire people, they keep more of their wages, they spend more, they bring out their property from tax shelters, and at the end of the day, this is proven to work. It actually doubled the federal tax revenue within 3 years under the Reagan administration, and those extra revenues we can put towards servicing our debt. And with that in check with a balanced budget, or pushing towards a balanced budget that's a zero-based budget like you and I would have for our home, where we don't continue to spend on credit cards that have compounding interest because you just get behind the power curve and you never get on top. We have to take government spending in hand. And the way we do that is by pushing responsibility for things that the federal government has taken back down to the states.
I want to go and stick with immigration. I want to go back to that because so many voters, especially Republican voters, saying immigration is going to be one of the key issues for them in this cycle. And I will go ahead and quote directly from your website. You said the United States must not succumb to the failed idea of multiculturalism, which has badly damaged Europe's economy and the internal stability of multiple nations. That was directly from your website. What did you mean by that? Because you had mentioned, give us you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor.
Yeah.
But in a way, you're saying we got to make sure that we keep out multiculturalism and saying that it has failed Europe.
Good question. So what multiculturalism represents is this idea where you can take a nation, let's say Denmark, and begin to split that into segments that represent different nationalities rather than blending into one as we did in days of old. If you think about it, it didn't matter where you came from. My heritage is German and Irish. My family came over here on boats, passed through Ellis Island, and they immigrated, they naturalized, they learned the language, they became tradesmen. My ancestors fought in the Civil War on the Union side. And at the end of the day, what does that mean? We became American, we integrated, right? And so what you find is that a multicultural society begins to cleave itself into segments, and they never really come together on anything. There's no national identity, if you will, and that becomes dangerous. And that is a future we have to avoid. And I think the way we avoid that is by saying, okay, if you're going to be here legitimately, if you're going to begin to comply with our laws, our regulations, we want you to be out from under the shadows. We don't want you to be controlled. What we want for you is to be American. We want for you, if you have goodness, and there's benefit you can bring this nation. If you're a material scientist and you have a PhD in something and you're from a nation where you're undergoing political persecution, I bet we can find a place for you here. We need your talent, but you need to learn our language. You need to understand what this country's history is. You need to understand what our Constitution represents. And, really, this whole race, this 2024 race boils down to Constitution and to essentially a situation where America is the new bullseye of essentially a great power competition that has decided to overcome it. And in fact, China by 2049 has declared that it will ascend past the United States in terms of power, which is the 100th birthday of the Communist Party. We cannot allow that to happen. And right now, our strategy is not to win, it's to compete. And I've said many times before, my dad was a racehorse trainer. You can put a three-legged horse in the Kentucky Derby, but that doesn't mean that it's going to win. It will compete, to be sure, but it doesn't mean it will win. And America needs a strategy that will put us on top. And we need a national security program that is second to none in the world, and I know how to deliver that for us. We have to go back to a grand strategy similar to what we had during the Cold War. That is a strategy of prevention. Back then, it was containment.
I think lastly here, reading over your policies, some of your viewpoints, I think part of the curiosity leads to why make a run for the White House? You did so just about 2 months ago, and a little bit later to the race, going up against formidable opponents, and a former president, former UN ambassador, former governor now. And so why make a race for the White House, not necessarily just Congress, or maybe some sort of national security advisor with your years of service?
Well, number one, we don't have time on our side. Our window to turn the ship of state or to avoid this dangerous intersection that I believe will lead to a global war or potentially the downfall of our republic, I believe we have months, not years, to avoid that future. Time is of the essence. We don't have time for JV candidates or lesser known candidates in some cases who don't have the experience that I have to get up to speed on what's going on. I have experience at the U.S. Department of State. I've worked in and with the White House and the National Security Council. I've been principal advisor to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I am a combat tested aviator. I have business experience that spans startups and large companies. Large corporations have implemented my strategies worldwide. At the end of the day, I have everything, including the character that is required for this nation's presidency. And the American people need to take a good look at what we need, not what they want. And I know that is sometimes a hard decision, but what we need as a nation is someone who will bring stability over the next 4 years, not chaos. And I represent that contrast. It's very important that our enemies do not see us in a weakened state over the next 4 years, because they will close ranks and take advantage of that. They won't hesitate for a moment. I've seen over the hill, and I know what's coming.
All right, David Stuckenberg, Republican primary candidate. Mr. Stuckenberg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Justin.